brought to you by Defiance Press. I'm John Griffin.
And I'm Ron Meyer.
And we have a great show for you today. Daniel Miller is the author of a brand new book called Texit, Why and How Texas Will Leave the Union. Folks, why don't you welcome Daniel Miller to the show?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Dan, it's a pleasure. We really found your book to be extremely interesting. Why don't you tell us, number one bestseller on Amazon, do people, are they actually ready to support Texas independence?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that has been, in my mind, very surprising, especially as of late. I mean, let's be honest. The concept of Texit is far less offensive and controversial than Maxine Waters. So, we're definitely breaking ground here. But what we have seen, literally in the 20 years that I have been engaged in advocacy for this issue, is we've watched the support steadily grow. Back in the late 90s, you could probably put the supporters of Texas independence in one single room. I know that it polled somewhere in single digits consistently.
Well, certainly they were less honest about being supporters of it then.
Well, there was this fear. But what you have found is that as this idea of self-determination has grown, and really as the reaction against federal overreach has grown,
right,
and Texans have chafed under it, they've become less and less bashful about expressing it, to the point that in 2014, right around the time of the Scottish independence referendum, Reuters conducted a poll across all the states. But in particular, Texas results were quite astonishing, where you had 54% of Republicans, somewhere around half of independent voters, and 35% of Democrats say that they supported the idea of Texas leaving the Union and becoming an independent country.
Now, wait a minute. You mean that almost 40% of Democrats even were supporting this idea in 2014?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the thing that was actually initially shocking to the pollsters about that was the same issue with a little less strong language was polled by Research 2000 back in 2009, where they asked just a simple question, sort of the tee-off. Do you think that Texas would be better off as an independent nation? And in that particular poll, you had 15% of Democrats. I mean, right around the height of, the Obama high.
Some of the talking heads have accused you guys of starting another civil war or creating the conditions for it. Usual fear-mongering, or it's the opposite extreme. You're dismissed offhand as a bunch of jokers. How do you respond to these kind of claims?
There's something about the opposition that love to live in the past. They love the 19th century when it comes to this particular issue. And what they do is they have forgotten that the world has continued spinning. History has continued to be written. And what we are seeing here in Texas is just this natural expression of about a 70 to 80 year period where the right of self-government began to achieve importance in people's lives.
We were a country, Daniel. I mean, that kind of has something to do with it, I think.
Well, I think that is part of it. But even beyond the roots of independence and the grievances that Texans share against federal overreach, what we have seen is this blossoming of nations and self-determination and self-governance around the world. At the end of World War II...
But Daniel, I've got to stop you there for a minute. I mean, Trump is president now. Everything's fine, right? I mean, shouldn't we just go back to the way things were before Barack?
Yeah, the idea that a single person in a single election is going to be able to solve the federal grievances is just as much fantasy as it is these opposition guys who believe that this is about refighting the Civil War.
So $20 trillion in debt, we can't get rid of that, you're saying?
Well, you're not going to be able to get rid of it. At the end of the day, Texans are sick and tired of being governed under 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations administered by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats. Texans in large numbers recognize the fact that the real game in town, the real folks that are in charge of things, are these unelected bureaucrats. And so, even for the folks who want to take some time, invest some hope in Trump and say give him a chance, the fact is Trump is not going to be president forever.
Right. Well, I mean, Daniel, there's a lot here on this issue that's too complicated to address today, but I'd like you to give our listeners kind of kind of an idea of why you think Texas is in a good position right now to do this. I mean, what would the economy be? How would the economy be impacted? Would this cause violence? I mean, are you proposing a Maxine Waters style uprising here, sir?
If we could just not talk about Maxine Waters, that would
we're
make
going to
my
talk
day.
about it. We've got to talk about it.
But here's what it boils down to. When you look at the modern day movements for this, especially what we saw with Brexit and some of these others over the last 15 to 20 years or so,
right?
What we have seen is a modern embrace of a peaceful political process for people to regain their right of self-government. And that's really what this is all about. So, there are these ideas that circulate around because so many folks live in a bubble. The critics love to live in this bubble where it's all about, what they think and their particular narrative about the way things should be. But what we've seen in very practical terms, with Brexit being a prime example, is that Texans can go to the polls. There is a legal framework for this to happen. Texans can
our
go
Constitution
to the polls,
says alter and abolish, doesn't it? I mean, that's pretty...
Article 1, Section 2 is about as clear as it can get. But Texans can go to the polls. We can vote to leave. We can reclaim our right of self-government under Article 1, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution. And then what we do is we behave like a nation. Generally, every question that people have about this particular issue is answered just by looking at how nations deal with one another around the world. Whereas Texas can come in from a position of strength at this point. Because just because we leave doesn't mean we're not friends with the remainder of the United States. And there is this idea that seems to float around, even after all the poll numbers, even after massive shows of political support among the people, that somehow the majority of the people, their minds go to this extreme apocalyptic scenario. And that's not the case.
Well, Daniel, we certainly appreciate your thoughts, and please tell people where they can buy your book.
Absolutely. The book is available right now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major book retailers. All
right. Well, sir, you have a blessed rest of your Sunday. When we come back, we're going to have author Misty Boyd.
I've seen a lot of places. I've been